So in this video, I'll be sharing with you some of my own thoughts on the latest developments concerning the case of Jay Slater and the apparent bizarre reason why there is now a delay in returning his body to the UK. Twisted Jay Slater sleuths are trying to gain access to the teenager's autopsy results and are interfering with his family getting the body home. The cruel attempt to access the grim information comes as Jay's devastated family were urged not to see the teenager's body in the morgue. Tenerife police said Jay's body had become very deteriorated after it had 29 days in the ravine, where he was eventually found on July 15th. Mum Debbie Duncan, Dad Warren Slater and brother Zach are now preparing to make the tragic journey home to the UK with Jay's body. But that hasn't stopped amateur detectives from trying to figure out the details of Jay's body and the condition it was in. Amateur sleuths have been trying to intervene in the process of flying Jay's body home and are searching online for autopsy results, reports the BBC. Details about the body may come to light regardless, as an inquest could be held when the body returns to the UK. If an inquest is opened in the UK, it could see witnesses such as those with him that night called to give evidence and answer questions. But with the evidence pointing to an accidental fall, the coroner might certify the cause of death without an inquest. Deaths which are ruled unknown, unnatural or violent can undergo a formal inquest where a coroner looks at the case and gives a final verdict on the cause of death, along with other key details. This is needed in order for a final death certificate to be produced. Several questions are yet to be answered in the case, including why Jay walked across the clearly dangerous terrain alone, and why he spent the night at a secluded Airbnb away from his pals. If a coroner in the UK decides to hold an inquest, it may mean more details emerge publicly to resolve some of the mysteries. The pre-inquest review, which could happen as soon as the Tenerife investigation is concluded, would see British authorities probe the case in depth. Okay, so according to mainstream media, some outside influences doesn't actually elaborate in any way, shape or form what those influences actually are or what that interference could actually entail. But by all accounts, some outside interference has now delayed Jay Slater being returned to the UK. However, I would say a much more sensible reason for this is the fact that the Tenerife police quite simply haven't concluded their end of this investigation, as mentioned in that same publication. So at this stage, the Tenerife police have not finished or have not completely concluded their investigation, hence the reason Jay Slater has not yet been returned to the UK. And we've also got some rather bizarre reports coming through from LBC. Take a listen to the following.
The mystery of Jay Slater has finally been solved. Over a month after the teenager went missing on holiday in Tenerife, his autopsy has been completed, with injuries including several broken bones. The result points to the cause of death being a fall or plunge from a height. Jay's loved ones are said to have found some comfort from the high likelihood that his death was instantaneous.
Now, what's become apparent to me, particularly over the past 24 to 48 hours or so, is that the mainstream media are simply recycling the news from 7 days ago. The autopsy result, we believe this was an accident, the body was deteriorated, many broken bones. We knew this 7 days ago. The mainstream media are completely blagging it at this point. And I just find it a little bit weird that now we're getting this LBC, the mystery has been solved. Nothing has come out about this case. No further developments have been given by the police regarding this case in about a week or so. We knew the body was deteriorated. We knew that the autopsy results may take some time because of the state of the body. We knew that he had many broken bones a week ago. Now, is it just a case here that questions are not welcome? That the many inconsistencies that still exist with this case, they're not to be highlighted anymore? We're just to put this all to bed. This was just an act of misadventure. This poor lad just walked off in the wrong direction and kept on going. There's nothing to see here. But as I said in my previous video, the only way that any sort of ground will be made in this case and any sort of answers may come out in the future is if there is some kind of inquest and they do have Jay's mobile phone. In my opinion, the reason why he left that Airbnb should be should be retrievable from his mobile phone. But what has become apparent to me in looking into this case, as I just touched upon just then, is the many, many inconsistencies from the very, very start until the end of this investigation. Now, there was actually a piece that I was due to put out the same day that they discovered Jay's body, and that was highlighting some of the inconsistencies which caught my attention. And what became apparent to me, and I still feel it's worth, discussing this to some degree. What became apparent to me is that there seemed to be two different versions of events being told as to how Jay appeared on the day he went missing. You had one individual saying, yeah, he was quite fine, he was happy, we were laughing, we were joking, didn't seem to be concerned, there was no real issues at all, just really saying there was no problem here. And yet another individual saying he was dehydrated, he had no water, no battery on his phone, and he was in a state of panic. But this wasn't just displayed on Jay's walk itself, but also extended back to his time at the Airbnb. When I went back and listened to Mark Williams-Thomas' piece, I found that quite interesting because, again, it seemed to share certain parallels with this idea that a certain set of individuals would say he was fine, another set of individuals would say the complete opposite. Just take a listen to the following.
On the morning of the 17th of June, on arrival back to the rental, Jay spoke to a number of different people on his phone, and they would describe him as very much awake and still buzzing. As a result of information we've received, we now know that Jay took certain actions whilst at the rental because he was clearly worried about his own safety, and this was shortly before he decided to leave.
Were you concerned at that point? Not at the time, no, because we were both laughing about it. I think he said, "Look where I am." I just come out of a festival myself because he didn't seem concerned on the phone.
He needed a drink. That he'd cut all his leg on a cactus, and that he had no idea where we were. To me, I can't go back there. I don't know where it is.
And I believe that's why many people still have very basic questions about this case. Well, how was Jay that morning? Just tell us how he was that morning. Was he afraid for his safety, or was he having a good time? Was he bored at where he was and just wanted to leave and sadly took the wrong direction and kept on going and going and going because he felt that was the best way and sadly he had an accident? Or was there something more to this story? Was he leaving because he was genuinely in fear for his own safety? Now, I don't know exactly what took place at that Airbnb. I've got no idea whatsoever. But you would have thought that at some stage during Jay's walk, he would have thought to himself, well, hang on a minute, I've got to cut my losses. I'm going to have to go back. I'm just going to have to wait for an extra half an hour or an hour for the bus. But he didn't, did he? He kept going. He kept carrying on towards the sea. Now, again, I would understand if his apartment was located down by the sea, but it wasn't. It wasn't as if he was walking in the right direction to begin with, and yet he continues on and on and on. The impression that I get is that anything was better than going back to the Airbnb. Anything was better than being in that general location. Did he not simply think at some stage, having walked 40 minutes, coming across the ravine and the dangerous terrain that he was walking every single step that he took, that he might just think, well, hang on a minute, I've got to go back. But he didn't. Even to Lucy, I can't go back there. I can't go back there. I don't know where it is. Was that the truth, or was it something else which meant that Jay couldn't go back to that Airbnb? Again, the only way that any ground will be made in this case in terms of the reason why is if they have Jay Slater's mobile phone. Surely the keys regarding this, the key to why he did what he did and how he ended up in such a precarious position lay within that mobile phone.